Hey guys, welcome to Scruf's Garage. Today we're going to be working on my new to me 2001 C5 Corvette. It has the LS1 in it. I bought this car about a week ago. For me, it's not a daily driver, but will become a weekend toy, and more specifically, my track car. My Turbo Miata I'm selling, and this is going to be my track car. It already has a little bit of work done to it. It's got a cam, and a few other performance things, but for the most part my focus isn't going to be on horsepower, but getting the car reliable. All the horsepower in the world is fun, but if it can't make it through a track weekend without giving you problems, then you've kind of wasted your time. So that's where we're going to start with this car, is just giving it a good tune-up, and then we'll start working our way through the different systems, making sure it's reliable and ready for the track. So one of the first things I decided to do in line with the tune-up is to change the spark plugs and the plug wires. I don't know when the last time that was done on this car. It has 63,000 miles on it. The spark plugs were probably changed when the previous owner put the camshaft in, but that was a number of years ago, and I don't know if they've been changed since then. So it's a fairly cheap upgrade to go ahead and change the spark plugs and the plug wires, just to make sure that's behind us and won't give us a problem. So for what I chose to run, I decided to go with a set of NGK spark plugs. This is their copper plugs. This is the TR6, which is a part number 4177. Most auto parts stores will have that. If you look at CarQuest or Advanced Auto Parts, they'll have that in stock. The TR6 is a step cooler as far as the temperature range for the spark plugs. I think a TR55 would be more along the lines of the OE spark plugs. So if you have a completely stock car, then maybe the TR55 is a better step for you. I chose to go with the TR6. Like I said, they're a slightly cooler plug. The main benefit there, neither is going to give you more or less horsepower than the other. But since this does have a cam in it, and I will be running it hard at the track, I decided to go with a slightly cooler plug. The key difference there, a hotter plug, if you run too hot of a plug, you could run into pre-detonation, which that's bad. But of course the other extreme, if you run too cold of a plug, you may end up with the plug fouling out, especially if you do a lot of idling or just low RPM type driving. It's kind of a waste there too. So you want to find something in that happy middle range. I think the TR6 will do it for me. So I'm going to give them a try and see how they do. I also decided to go ahead and replace the spark plug wires while I was at it. There are a number of options. I looked hard at the MSD plug wires, but ultimately decided to go with the GM performance wires. The key difference there, the MSDs are an 8.5 millimeter, while the GM ones are an 8 millimeter. The reality is you're not going to see a performance difference out of either one of them, and I had read some reviews that the LS1 has a metal shield around each of the plugs, and I'd read some guys had difficulty using the MSD plugs and keeping the OE metal heat shield around the plug. So I decided I'd go with the GM performance version. We'll see how those do, but I'm pretty excited. I got these from Summit Racing. GM part number 12495519. So if that's what you're in the market for, you come with a red plug wire. Overall look like pretty good quality, so we'll see how they do. The other thing I decided to do while I was in there, again not necessary, but I got some of these plug wire heat boots. They're a heat shield that go on they'll cover the body of the plug wire. This car has long tube headers, and there's a lot of heat generated there in the engine bay. That way, if one of these gets a little too close to one of the headers, hopefully we won't burn through and cause a miss. So like I said, just a little bit of insurance. Again, I got these. These are actually the Summit brand. So we'll see how these do, but I think it'll turn out pretty well. So like I said, this is my first time working on the Corvette, but I've got a variety of tools handy. Everything I've read says you need a variety of extensions and swivels and that sort of thing. My ratchet wrench, my ratchet here has the swivel head on it, so hopefully that will come in handy. I've got a couple of different sizes of extensions and a couple of different swivels. So let's get started and we'll see how it goes. So one of the first problems you're probably going to run into when you're ready to go back to the new plug wire or one of these fancy heat shields is that there is a metal ring in the end to give it shape. The problem is that ring does not expand like the other end, and this ring is too small for either end of these plug wires to pass through. You'll just never get it through there. I'd read about some other guys having this problem. It's hard to tell when you're looking at these online if they have the ring. I'm pretty sure almost all of them do. So what I did, I just decided to bite the bullet and cut the ring. So this is the ring that's inside of it. I used a pair of cutters, something like this, to cut through. It's really not that difficult to cut through. And then you just kind of push it around. It does unfortunately ravel the end of the boot, but there's not much you can do about that. But you can push the ring around and then pull it out, and now you can get the plug wire to fit properly through. So I thought you might want to see me actually taking one of the rings out. It's pretty simple, but in case you're curious how to do it, like I said, I got a pair of cutters, put it on the ring, hear it break. I found it easier to take a pair of needle nose and put in there, and then expand, opens it up a little bit, and then I twist to make the ends at different heights. Just makes it a little easier to push out. Push a little bit, you see the ring come out. And boom. There you've got it out. Now it's a little bit more flexible. And if you push on it a little bit, it's a little easier to get the plug boot through. So I'll slide one through for you. I decided I wanted the cut end down at the spark plug end. Might be a little less obvious in case somebody ever looked. So I ran it down this way. See how it fits. And then also, if you pull it, you can tighten it out. It lengthens a little bit. I decided to put a zip tie on this end. And it's just personal preference, but I wanted the head of the zip tie less visible, just a personal preference. And also found that when working under the hood, you always end up with this cut end. It always cuts on your wrist and that sort of thing if it's sticking out somewhere that you might hit it. So this goes on the coil pack, and then this goes down to the spark plug. So I wanted the head on the back side. Kind of cinch it down a little bit. And then I use my side cutters, and I always use the flat side against the head of the zip tie. That way when it's tucked up like that, you have less of something to scrape your wrist on and that sort of thing. When I first started, I put another zip tie down on this end, but the problem with that, once you have this metal protective shield, it goes over this way. Make sure this end doesn't keep your spark plug boot from going all the way to the end of the metal shield. Otherwise you'll get some fitment problems. So in the end I decided not to put a zip tie at this end. With a little zip tie up here, this end is not going anywhere and leaves it a little bit of flexibility to make sure it stays put. From there, I took a Q-tip and a little bit of dielectric grease. I swap around on the inside of the spark plug end of the plug wire. Like I said, just a little bit helps keep any moisture out. Do the same thing. This end goes to the coil pack. Just a little bit in there to help keep out moisture. Q-tips. Pulling apart. Except the metal shield goes back on there. You don't have to reuse these, I don't think. I think they're there mainly for protection, specifically probably from heat, but they also probably cut down on some radio frequency waves that might interfere with your radio. So I decided to reuse them. Like I said, I don't see any problems with that. And then setting up the new spark plugs. Here's some of the plugs I pulled out. So the car was previously running the NGK TR6, which would be the stock heat range, and these had been gapped at 60 thousandths. So this is set up for 40 thousandths right here, and you get it in there, and there's quite a bit of gap in there. They were at 60 thousandths, which I think at one time may have been the OE recommendation. I think since then it's caused some ignition misfires and drivability concerns. So I think the general recommendation at this point is to tighten that up a little bit. I decided to go ultimately with 40 thousandths. Pretty simple. This is 35 thousandths right here, which is what the NGKs were gapped at right out of the box. I just opened that up just a bit and then check it at 40 thousandths, and that's perfect. Like I said, it's a very minor change, but that's how I wanted to set mine up. And then also put a little bit of dielectric grease on this end. You can get a little bit down on the porcelain as well. That will fit down into the plug wire. And then very sparingly use a little bit of anti-seize on the threads. Like I said, just a little bit. No need to go crazy with this. Like I said, you don't want to use so much that it begins to contaminate the plug end. Could cause misfires and foul up the plug, that sort of thing. So that's just a little bit as to how I was setting up my plug wires and the spark plugs, how I got them, that sort of thing. I've done 3 so far. This is the last one on the passenger side. This is all the way back by the firewall. So far so good. Just a little tricky getting things apart, but if you work at it and you get the right extension combination, that certainly helps. The other tool I'm using, this was actually given to me, but these are designed to grab the plug wire. They grab onto it from this angle and allows you to twist, kind of break them free. You can grab this end and pull out. Excellent tool to help get these spark plug wires out, because once they've been in there for 40, 50,000 miles, they are a bear to get loose sometimes. So this really made a difference. Several retailers make these. I'm sure you could go to Sears, Snap-on. These are Blue Point. These were actually given to me by a mechanic a long time ago, but they're worth their weight in gold. So definitely get a pair of these if you're taking on this project. Okay, so I just want to give you a visual. I got the passenger bank plug wires done, so you can see how the boots fit on there. Got the new plug wires. Something to keep in mind when you're installing this end. This is the coil pack. When you're pushing this part of the boot on, it's kind of a double click. You'll hear it click once, and then push a little bit more, and you'll hear the second click. That's how you know it's on completely at the coil pack end. If you don't do that, then you'll probably have some misfires or some type of drivability issue. So all my hard work will get covered up here in a second when I put the cover back on, but I have the peace of mind to know that this was done correctly. And like I said, I've got the heat shields down here that will hopefully, I don't know if you can see that, make a difference. You can see how close it is with the tubes coming out of the headers. So hopefully it will make a difference. So I've moved on to the driver's side. I was actually on the second cylinder from the front. Not sure what firing order is there, but the moment I pulled on this OE plug wire, it came apart. You see the very thin wiring that goes inside of it. So it just goes to show you that these are very susceptible to heat. degradation, and that protecting them from heat will make the plug wire last longer. That's what I hope to accomplish with the heat insulating boots that I got from Summit. But it just goes to show, man, I barely touched this, and it came apart on me. So if you haven't addressed your plug wires in a long time, there's probably some gains to be had, just to make sure, if nothing else from a reliability standpoint, but perhaps even a little bit of performance as well. This could have been causing a misfire occasionally, and it could have been just a matter of time before it broke on its own, and it could have caused me some real problems. And this would have been really frustrating to have this type of problem at a track weekend. It's one thing to do this project in the luxury of my garage. I've got the fans blowing, I've got all my tools laid out on the table, but when you're trying to do this in the paddock between run sessions, really frustrating. So something to think about if you haven't addressed this yet on your Corvette or other LS1 vehicle. Okay, so just to follow up as I make progress, so I'm on the third spark plug on the driver's spank, the third one from the front. So as I pulled the plug wire off, so again this one's separated as well, it's just the thin wire in there. What I discovered when I went to get the spark plug out though, is that this end, which goes over the tip of the spark plug, had actually stuck on there, and this had pulled out. So it just goes to show you how fragile these plug wires have become, and that's all because of the extreme heat inside the engine base, especially if you've done some performance work, and the long tube headers put a lot of heat very close to these plug wires, so you begin to get some degradation in the plug wires and the connections and that sort of thing. So again, if you're taking on this sort of a project, make sure you've cleared your weekend schedule, that you don't need the car right away, because you never know what you're going to run into. This was kind of a bear to get to. Eventually I was able to get a pair of vice grips in there and get a hold of the end of it and pull it out, but I had to work at it probably 10-15 minutes to get a position where I could get it out. So just plan ahead. Like I said, you never know what kind of problems you're going to run into, but hopefully the heat protection we're putting on the new plugs and wires will make a difference. That should we have to go through this again in the future, we don't run into these type of challenges. So just something to think about. So by far the most difficult spark plug to get to is the last one in the very back by the firewall on the driver's side. I believe that's number 7. You hear guys talk about that a lot, just how difficult it is to get to. It's very tight. It's right up against the exhaust tube for the header. And the shortest, if I did just the spark plug socket, I couldn't get in there with my ratchet. The shortest extension I had was this length, and together was just too long. So my workaround for that, these are actually 2 adapters. This goes from a 3/8 to a 3/4, and then this goes from a 3/4 back down to a 3/8 drive. But together I can use them, and it's significantly shorter, maybe an inch, maybe a little less, than my shortest extension. So when I combined them on this, was the perfect length for getting out that last spark plug. So hopefully that helps you. Hopefully you have a couple of these adapters sitting around. In my case, proved to be a lifesaver. I did not have a short enough extension. This really made the difference, and once I figured out this length, I got it out pretty quickly. I had looked at trying to put a wrench. This is a 3/4 inch. Takes a 3/4 inch wrench, but with the exhaust tube laid up beside it, it's very difficult to get a wrench on there and to be able to turn it. There's quite a few things in the way. The other thing you'll have to do, I'm not over at the car at the moment, but the top of the brake master cylinder booster, the big black booster, there's a vacuum line that comes into the top of it. Disconnect the clamp. You may have to twist that line back and forth a little bit to get it to break loose, but then you can pull that off and put it back to the side. and that'll give you clearance to get in there with your wrench. So that, combined with using this as my extension, ended up being the key difference of getting that spark plug out. Otherwise, you really might be up a creek with that. So hopefully that helped you. Just something to keep in mind, just a tip, trick that I came up with on the fly. Alright guys, the moment of truth. I've gotten all 8 spark plugs done, got the new plug wires and the heat protectors on the plug wires. All 8 are done, so it's the great moment of truth. Let's see how it sounds. So overall, not too bad of a project. Do plan on the better part of an afternoon. Go ahead and clear your schedule. Hopefully you don't have to run out and get any parts. But like I said, having a good assortment of tools, you never know what type of issue you may run into. Certainly would not have guessed that the tip would have pulled out of the plug boot, but it did. And of course, you got to find a way around that. So make sure you've got a good assortment of tools. Lay out your afternoon, make sure you've got everything you need lined up, and it won't be too bad of a project, though do plan on bleeding a little bit. I'm not quite sure how GM managed to get so many sharp objects into such a small area, but it is kind of rough on your knuckles in there, but I think it's worth it. I just took the car for a drive. Cranks, runs very smoothly, it's got a good idle to it. Like I said, I wasn't trying to correct any particular problem. It was doing well, so this was more preventative maintenance, making sure it was ready so that when I go to the track for the first time with it, I've got everything in place. So